There's that line from a movie, things get said in Indy and they echo around eternity. Well, they do mean things. What do these words mean from Andy Reid and Brett Veach? Plus, Matt Derrick helps us break down the expectations for this offseason that are coming up today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
I love it when I can quote Ridley Scott movies, so that's your quote for the day there, folks. Enjoy that one. Welcome in. It's Locked On Chiefs, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Check out another Locked On show for your next listen. We appreciate you. Please like, sub, do the things, get all the stuff and all the business, because we're on every platform, everywhere, all the time, every day. Good Lord, we don't even take a break for the offseason. We get guys like Matt to show up every week, just like normal. Matt is from ChiefsDigest.com. If you don't know him, I'm not sure what you've been watching the last 6 years, but he's been here on Wednesday like clockwork. So welcome in, Matt. We're going to have a great show for you. We're going to talk left tackles futures and what some of the variations might include, because there were things said today that do have some ramifications. Before that, we will get to Travis Kelce and the expectations for both he and for the rest of the roster at his position group. That is important. But this is kind of the kickoff event for the Combine every year, Matt. And the first time that neither you or I have been there in quite a while. But Andy Reid and Brett Veach speak to the media once. You get a couple of comments here. Like it's been silent since the Super Bowl, and I don't blame them. Both of them spoke to the media today, and we've had a chance to go through it. What were your takeaways? What really stood out to you this time?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there was anything really that was that surprising from either Andy Reid or Brett Veach. Maybe this and we'll talk about their Travis Kelce language that was at one point both bullish and less than bullish at the same time from each of them. I don't think that we heard anything too dramatic about the left tackle situation. I mean, I think everything that we've heard was kind of in line with expectations. There's maybe a little bit of nuts and bolts. It'll be coming out of discussions, and we'll hear coming out of this the whole week and everything about maybe just a little bit more about the salary cap situation and maybe some of the conversations. But I do like to say, hey, it's like a Chiefs drinking game. Anytime you hear Brett Veach at the Combine talking about having dialogue with players and their agents, drink, and there was a fair amount of dialogue today. With some key players, Trey Smith amongst them. So I don't know I don't know if there was anything really earth-shattering or groundbreaking, but at the same time, there was a little bit of just, I feel like, contemplativeness coming out about the Super Bowl, because obviously, both kind of addressed the loss and what it meant, since this is especially the first time we really heard from Brett Veach since the Super Bowl loss, and the first time since Andy Reid's been able to have a little bit of time and distance from the loss.
Yeah, what did Andy say? A bad day to have a bad day. And give him kudos, didn't put it all on the players. I think performance was an issue. And I do think, as we talked about post-game, there were some flaws in the game plan. The question becomes to me is, after that reflection, did he seem to you, because he didn't seem to me, as someone that is going to change his stripes? A lot of people want to talk about, hey, they're going to run the ball more next year. They're going to do X, Y, or Z. No, Andy Reid is Andy Reid. Ain't nothing changing that I can tell, Matt. Did you see any indication of it?
The only thing that I would say that could result in maybe things changing is, when Andy Reid talked about the accountability coming out of this and, and holding each other accountable, I don't think he was just speaking directly towards the players. I think he was also speaking towards his coaching staff as well. And that could be maybe a little bit of a gauntlet thrown down, in the sense that, you're talking about, hey, this loss was, everybody owned a piece of it. Andy Reid absolutely admitted that. I mean, it wasn't just one player, wasn't one coach. It was everybody owned a piece of that performance, and holding everybody accountable for their part of it and expecting them to be better. And if you look at that in terms of the coaching staff, I know and get that there might be some that want to see, some changes in the coaching staff, maybe an overhaul. If it results in either a change in approach, or it's kind of, maybe a line in the sand, if you will, but it's hey, wait a minute, you know what? You and your group needs to step up in 2025, because just being as good as you were in 2024 isn't good enough. That might be the challenge that, maybe that they're going to have it at some positions, and maybe it will be with some of the coaching staff, that they're going to have to be better. Their groups are going to have to perform better in 2025. And if they don't, then maybe that's when accountability meets action.
And that's what stands out to me as well, because other than a couple of coaches that were given, quite honestly, better situations, they were enticed by better opportunities for themselves. No one was let go from this staff. And on the outside, you can take it in two ways. This is a staff that, for the most part, went to 3 straight Super Bowls. Okay. Do you really want to mess with what's not necessarily broken? But yet, it didn't quite reach the pinnacle and specifically did not reach the expectation that Andy Reid had for this season. So does the fact that it was just basically 2 replacements, not anyone really being relieved of their duties, does that ring true for you in what we should expect going from here to trying to get back to another championship?
Well, and that's kind of, the differing tone a little bit, between Andy Reid and Brett Veach, and not to say that they're not on the same page. I think that they are. I think you're just looking at things a little bit differently. It might be even their own mindset looking at things a little bit differently. A couple of times Brett Veach in his remarks today talked about 15-1. I get 15-2, but he was acknowledged, at least in the beginning of the day, that he's talking about games with the starters. So he's counting it as 15-1, balancing 15-1 with what happened at the Super Bowl, balancing first 16 games versus 1 game. And yes, the Chiefs, they're not necessarily going to overreact to 1 game. Maybe they should, but I get that. I mean, there's not necessarily a reason to throw out the baby with the bathwater. But then again, if you look at some of the longer term issues with this team beyond just 1 season, then you might look at it and say, okay, wait a minute. There's a couple of, changes that need to happen, either in the way that this team procures talent, the way that this team develops talent, or both. There are some areas where they can get better. And obviously they have to get better because this year wasn't good enough to win a Super Bowl.
And that's really what it comes down to. One thing that will help you win a Super Bowl is to have your superstars intact. There was conversation, at least quotes, about Travis Kelce and the decision that is looming there. Not the only conversation, but we're going to dig into what was said and what was meant about Travis Kelce's return, possibly, coming up next. If you want all the more, you need to get to ChiefsDigest.com because Matt writes words better than I say them. And I don't write for nothing, so you're not going to get much from me. If you want some of my cleaned up editorialized work, you can find it at NFL33.com, as well as my site, RGR Football. But Matt over at ChiefsDigest.com and Chiefs Digest here on the YouTube platform, that's where you want to get them. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire statement word for word, Matt. I'm going to give a synopsis, and if I don't give enough, please tell me. But the bottom line basically came out to me that comments were, hey, we left it when he left, that Travis is expecting to play again. He's going to fill out his contract. He's got 1 more year under contract. We expect him back. That's what I took away from that. Did I get anything wrong?
No, you really didn't. And, and once again, Andy Reid and Brett Veach, and there's their different approaches and different language on everything. Andy Reid tried to very specifically avoid, sharing anything one-on-one with his conversation with Travis. He alluded to obviously their exit meetings and he talked with Travis at that point. But he also kind of spoke a little bit about just what he generally tells the players to do and not specifically Travis. But then again, his language, echoed what you and I have been talking about for a while now, which is that, hey, at the end of this season, what's your message to Travis Kelce? If Travis Kelce says, he's thinking about maybe not coming back, message is go take your time, get away from football, relax. It's been a long season. It's been a long 3 seasons. Go relax, take care of business, do what you need to do, come back and let me know how you're feeling. That was the Andy Reid vibe. Now, Brett Veach read it differently. Brett Veach got pretty specific about how, what he thought that, Travis Kelce's vibe was. And he's like, hey, Travis is all fired up to come back next year. Now, Brett may have gone really far because Brett, if you want to really parse his statement out, I mean, Brett was basically saying, oh, yeah, Travis Kelce's coming back for 2025. And, hopefully he has a great season to end a great career. Meaning he's coming back for 2025 and that's it.
Right.
So once again, I mean, I don't know if you can put a whole lot of stock in what gets said, but clearly the absolute bottom line message from the Chiefs at the Combine is that they're expecting Travis Kelce to be back in 2025. I think that's at this point, the expectation of everybody. I would be very surprised if Travis Kelce is not back with this team in 2025.
I personally agree with you. And it is very clear that that is the expectation. One last dance is what it feels like to me. I will say this, though. At the time, the thing that people I think are conflating at this point is that they've had some kind of recent contact. This was weeks ago. The last time they saw Travis, as the season ended, the fallout from the Super Bowl, a week later on his own podcast, Travis did not sound like he agreed with those sentiments. And I can't read too much into his public persona because he's going to keep things close to the chest, as you should. But I'm just not 100% sold. I feel like that's what should happen. I feel like that's what I would counsel him to do. But if he doesn't, there's two scenarios here. Whether he's back or not changes the whole thing. Not only, in my opinion, at the tight end position, but at the wide receiver position as well. Expectations for this roster, Noah Gray under contract. A little bit of question mark after that. Obviously, the injury to the rookie Wiley last year, maybe you wanted him to be in a better place to be able to step in and at least, if Travis returns, take some snaps, take some wear off of him. I think that still has to be the plan despite the ACL, but now I think it has to be expanded. If Travis doesn't return, I think that has to expand to the big slot type guy, not necessarily a true X out there on the edge of the formation, but a guy that can line up similar to where Travis does and do some of the similar things. And that's got a big wide receiver body in my opinion. How did you take those and what are your expectations?
Yeah, really interesting, especially because since, there wasn't really a detailed conversation, today about the tight end position beyond Travis Kelce, because as you mentioned, they do have Noah Gray. Noah Gray is a different flavor of tight end than Travis Kelce. I mean, we've talked about that forever. I mean, they're two different types of players. Not that Noah Gray doesn't have a role, but some of the things that Travis does and where he lines up and where he plays, not necessarily Noah Gray's strong suit. So, who is? They could obviously tender and keep Peyton Hendershot, but what was your return in 2024 as far as the Hendershot acquisition? Now, very late in the process too. So he really probably didn't get to show you what he could do offensively. It was probably just more of what he can do from a physical standpoint. And I don't know if the Chiefs, saw enough to bring him back there, but you really, kind of a mixed return in 2024. Where else? Jared Wiley. Well, Jared Wiley, I thought looked tremendous, during the offseason and during training camp. But coming back from that knee injury, what can you expect? When will he be back? What, will it be 100%? I mean, those are, big questions. So, yeah, without Travis Kelce, without plotting him onto this team, you've got some question marks. And even then, even with Travis, I think you've got questions because when Travis makes his decision firmly about whether he's going to come back or not, I think there also will have to be the conversation about what the plan is for Travis Kelce. Is the plan to let him play until the wheels fall off, that he's just going to play 90% of the snaps and he's going to practice every day until he just can't go anymore? Or will they try to come up with a plan to keep him healthy and fresh and ready so that he can be playing his best football at the end of the season and, and not maybe have he had a curve this year. It seemed like it was a struggle for him early. Things got better. And then it was a struggle again late. If you're the Chiefs, you're most concerned about having Travis Kelce play his best football in January and February. So it's how do you come up with a plan to do that? If he's not there, then you're Brett Veach. You probably are starting to look at the back of the envelope and figuring out what are some of your other options. Because as far as that bodied receiver that you're talking about that can do the things that Travis does, is there a guy in this roster that does it? I don't see it right now.
No, I don't either. And that leads me away from the position of the traditional tight end position as well. But there's also a hybridization, and we've seen this team have to make adjustments. It's been a very long time, obviously, with Travis Kelce in his tenure in Kansas City. But there's not a reason to think that the old days of the Philadelphia Andy Reid and even the Jason Avant role back in the day, where you have that big slot, I think that could fulfill a similar role if Travis decides to hang it up. I don't think that person's on the roster either, though. So that looks like another acquisition to me. Does it to you?
Could very well be. Absolutely. Because, you look at the wide receiver group and what the Chiefs have under contract, and it's an incomplete group. And Brett Veach even alluded today, one, I think, very telling answer was in talking about He was asked about Mahomes' depth of target and getting, that back up again. And, and he mentioned a little bit about the protection and having some faith in the trust, and everything. There was a little bit of his answer that went on an adventure talking about that maybe Travis knows, or maybe that Patrick knows too much now. And maybe he sees things that aren't there. He sees things, the defense is doing things to him that they're not doing anymore. There was a little bit of interestingness in that answer, but I think there was some legitimacy in the sense that, two things he said is that one, Mahomes has to have trust in the offensive line. Well, how do you do that? You reinforce the offensive line. You can't just tell Patrick, go out and trust those guys. You have to give him guys that he trusts. But he also said, add a couple of weapons. So I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, the Chiefs need some weapons. Do they need a big body, kind of like Travis, to make that bridge towards the future? Yeah. Do they need more speed at receiver and in the backfield? Yeah. So it seems like those are going to be a couple of areas that the Chiefs have to be looking at towards draft and free agency.
It's a perfect year to need an athletic matrix guy, folks. And I'm going to help you out over at Roque APC. So make sure you get over there. Protection is job number one. We all know that. It's not changing anytime soon. So what are the comments today, and what were the futures of the prospective left tackles, those that we know and those that we don't? That's coming up next. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get into it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place your live bets throughout the game, start to finish. Even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can get there. You can stay in the action. And if you want to go looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into same-game parlay. You got to love that because it's a new aspect. You can just roll it into it. If you're backing your team for a late-game rally or picking up a player who just hit a three and you think he's getting really, really hot, you can do that in the app, and it makes it super easy. Right now, our new FanDuel customers are getting $150 in bonus bets if you first get a $5 bet that wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets right now. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL and the NBA. You can get all the information you need, combine or otherwise, at ChiefsDigest.com and Chiefs Digest here on the YouTube platform. More from me over at RGR Football, as well as some of the gear that you can get there, and NFL33.com. My crew is expanding over there. We've got a lot of great content that is about the league, not just about the Chiefs. I think you'll enjoy it. Matt, I said it the day after. I said the day after that, and I'm going to continue to say it. This group cannot be set at left tackle. There is twice now the Super Bowls have been cost by that position specifically, but the O-line in general. And while we thought a lesson was learned, clearly I think there were more complications in trying to address it this season for Brett Veach. It was not a simple, let's go get a guy. It was trouble trading up. It was trouble reaching agreements with free agents, trouble actually finding a free agent you felt was an upgrade. That's a problem. This splits into two halves for me. One is very, very upfront. First thing you have to do is solidify your evaluation of what you have in Kingsley Suamataia as you know it right now, this moment. From my perspective, I'm going to call that a redshirt year. I think there were mistakes made. I'm not going to dwell on them. I think he is able to still grow into a left tackle of the future for this group. Am I crazy?
I don't necessarily think you're crazy. I'm just not sure that the Chiefs agree with you. The message all throughout, unless we are being completely snowed and sandbagged, is just simply that the Chiefs think that his best future is at guard. And, and obviously there's the potential for the need for this team for one, if not two guards, because obviously the future with both Trey Smith and Joe Thuney on this team are kind of up in the air. I mean, Andy Reid at least, addressed the idea that, hey, Joe Thuney is not the left tackle of the future for this team. If he's going to play in this team next year, he's going to be back at left guard. If Trey Smith is with this team, you're feeling pretty good about your line. You're just now it's all down to that left tackle spot. But if you don't have Trey Smith, then Kingsley Suamataia is most likely your next man up. And I would say that probably both the right guard and the left guard spot. I mean, because it's probably an either or. I mean, it's going to be really hard to sign Trey Smith and keep Joe Thuney. If you keep Joe Thuney, it's going to be really hard to sign Trey Smith. I mean, it goes kind of both ways. Either way, you've got a guard position that's probably going to be open. So the Chiefs they seemed at this point to be in the mindset that Kingsley's best position is going to be guard, which then means, who's going to be the left tackle for this team?
That means there is an open door right there. So even if they don't agree with me, even if that's your backup role, you still have to go out and make acquisitions. I thought Andy was very, very upfront today that we are keeping all options open, both free agency and the draft. That tells me it's all systems go on left tackles, no matter what, job number one. That's how I interpreted it. Do you think I'm wrong?
You're not wrong. I mean, I think every door is open, and the Chiefs are going to consider them all. They'll consider the options that they have in house, which honestly at this point is probably DJ Humphries or bust as far as the in-house options. I don't think that there's anybody else at this point that they're really looking at seriously, sliding into that. Wanye and Kingsley would be the next two most likely candidates. And like we said, I mean, at this point, you just don't see that with Kingsley. And, Wanye, if his name gets mentioned, it's much more as a right tackle in the future than it is a left tackle. Don't see any evidence that they're looking for a huge leap from someone like an Ethan Driscoll or a True Godric to all of a sudden become the left tackle. So, your in-house options, DJ Humphries. What are your outside options? I mean, Ronnie Stanley, Cam Robinson. I'm not as enamored with Alaric Jackson as I know a lot of Chiefs fans are. I don't get any sense that the Chiefs are super enamored yet with, but obviously it's really early in the process. So, we got a couple of weeks of smoke before we'll get to really, maybe who the Chiefs free agents prospects really are. But I know from at least talking to people, leading up to the Super Bowl, really it was more of a Stanley or Robinson were the two highest priorities in free agency. And then you get into the draft, which, once again, the Chiefs do like some tackles, but it is so hard to get a first round tackle if you're not in the top 20, because if you're going to stay at 31, and maybe even if you just slide to 21, you might still be getting a guy that you have a second round grade on. And there's just no guarantee at that spot. The Chiefs took a second round tackle last year that they really had a third round grade on. So, that's just the nature of the draft. If you want, and, my colleague Nick Jacobs did a great job breaking this down. Half the left tackles in the league were taken in the first 23 picks of the draft. And all but one of those were in the top 20. So if you're not getting into the top 20, you're getting a starting left tackle is a total crapshoot.
Yep. It's 17 or bust as far as I'm concerned if you want an actual starting caliber left tackle in this draft. We'll talk more about draft trade-ups and all that in the future here, folks. But I'm glad you see it the same way that I do. That's got to be the first and last and every step in between that they have to get accomplished. That doesn't necessarily lock down the whole offensive line. An interesting question you bring up about right tackle, and the amount of dollars that they're spending in this offensive line is definitely unique, especially given where Trey is and where Creed Humphrey, who clearly has earned his contract to this point. I don't know if you can say that about everybody on this roster. The interior three, I believe right now are still the priority because that's got to be kept if you can. So if your gut told you right now, and after the comments that you heard today, do they end up going the free agent track or the draft track? What do you think is the most likely scenario?
I mean, if we're talking about just who's going to be the starting left tackle for this team in week one, I think the least likely option is that it's a rookie from this year's draft. It's a road that the Chiefs have been down a year ago, and it didn't work out real well. And I mean, and I even including the idea of Wanye being in that conversation because they've thrown a couple of draft picks at it in the last couple of years. And let's face it, I mean, developing tackles has been a challenge for this team. And, and Andy Heck has even talked about the challenges of developing a left tackle and, it taking more than 1 year. And especially if you want that player to go out and play at a Super Bowl level. So I think it's either going to be DJ Humphries or the field. I mean, it's always possible. Maybe your dream comes true. Maybe Kingsley Suamataia shows up in May for OTAs and blows this team away. But I think the more likely thing is that they're going to take a couple of cracks at it in free agency and see what they can do. They'll see what happens with Trey Smith if they can't get something done with Trey and all of a sudden they have some money available. Maybe they will look at free agency. It's just that the challenge is that there's only maybe a couple of guys that are really intriguing as free agent candidates. And then you get into the conversation of, well, you want a trade and sign? That might be even tougher, because then you're talking about giving up draft capital. And the way that this team is built, it is built on making sure that they get as many draft picks as they can and hit on as many as they can.
And when you look at the dispersion of this particular cap for this team, that only echoes further and further and further. And folks, we will get into the cap tomorrow with Chris, and maybe we'll break down those percentages and what they truly do look like, apart from other teams that have been successful in this league as of late. But as we say, we are tracking everything at the Combine. The Athletic Matrix will be coming, as we always do. Stay tuned for that. We'll have some standouts as we go through the week, and Matt will have all of his coverage over at ChiefsDigest.com and Chiefs Digest here on the YouTube platform, as well as 41 is the mic. So, Matt, anything that I missed or anywhere else that we need to be searching for you right now?
I think you hit them all. So, and yeah, I know I have to come out of my winter slumber, my post Super Bowl slumber, and write some words for Chiefs Digest. So that'll be coming on what's happening at the Combine this week.
Awesome. Thank you, as always, for keeping us on the level and steady path. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you, Ryan. Take care, my friend.
Everybody have a great day. Combine to come. Lots more from us. As I try to end this show on a high note, there could be new Chiefs very, very soon. And the next draft picks are going to be in Indy this weekend. Thanks for joining us today. Make sure you like and sub, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.